you're not leaning on Jesus, you're not leaning on anybody. I remember Robbie Hunter, he's a short guy. He came one year to High Street and he sang, he had cowboy boots, cowboy hat, and he said, me and my wife just had a son and we named him Buck. About 2 years later, he came to another concert. He said, I told you last time we named our son Buck. He said, we just had a little girl, he said, we named her Buckette. He was a wonderful guy. Still is. He sang with the Imperials for a long time, but he still sings and writes songs and all that good stuff. I guess I better turn to Genesis. Genesis chapter 6. We're going to get back into our study on the faith of Abraham. Chapter 16, sorry. We talk about his faith, and then we're now down to a story about Abraham and Sarah, about having children. I found out, I listened to this book on Abraham, and found out that when God took Abraham out and said, I'm going to make you, which leads up to this, I'm going to make your seed as the stars in the heavens. Now, when you go out at night, if you look, your eyes, you can see 180 degrees. I have no idea how many stars are in the sky. Anybody know? I'm serious. Anybody know the number? I don't know. Leon was one of those that knew a lot of the constellations. He loved looking at the stars. He could tell you what these constellations are. You can find the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper or something like that. But Leon knew a lot about a lot of the other ones. But he took Abraham out and he said, I'm going to make your seed as the stars in the sky. But the verb that was used of taking him out was the conjugation, has the connotation that God literally, he wanted him to know this so much that God literally picked him up and took him out there so he could see him. I thought, sometimes God has to pick us up sometimes and take us. Sometimes he has to force us to do something because we're what? There's a word that starts with S-T-U-B-B. What's that word? Stubborn. How many will admit you're stubborn on some things? How many are going to fit and raise your hand and say you're not stubborn? I'm from Missouri, and Missouri is called the Show Me State. But I found out there's just as many stubborn people in Indiana as there are in Missouri. I found out there's one that was born in Michigan, that lived in Wisconsin, and lives in Missouri, lives in Indiana now. I'm not going to mention my wife's name. But we all have a stubborn streak in us. But the connotation is that God wanted him to know this so much, he picked him up and took him out and said, look, look what's there. This is what I'm going to do for you. So now they're at a point, they're up in age. Ladies who had children, I think most of the ladies here have had children. Joyce hasn't, but Joyce, you missed the joy of childbirth. But ladies, how many of you would want to have a child in your 90s? Anybody? 80s? 70s? 60s? 50s? 40s? Maybe? 30s? 20s? We have them when we're young. We have more tolerance. We have more patience. This lady a few years ago in Italy, she was fertilized, and she was 70-something years old and had a child. Crazy lady. 70-something years old, just so she could have the record. So, as I said, we've been looking at the story of Abraham. We'll read verses here in a second about his faith. Hebrews 11:8 tells us that Abraham followed the Lord by faith. Now that's a big word. We've looked at so far several things, several developments of his faith since God called him and since God gave him a job, and God told him, you're going to be the father of a great nation. So, in life, things don't always happen, but when we have the good things happen, we like to have the victories, but there are victories and defeats. There's no sports team that wins every game. You don't play a board game and win every game. You don't play, tag and you're always the winner. Nobody always wins. There's sometimes defeats. Before we go on, what happens is what we should do is learn from the defeats. All right, let me ask a question before we read our verses. Is God in charge of, wish I could emphasize this word enough. Is God in charge of everything? Amen. Large word, font 7,000. Capital letters, bold, underlined, italics. And I mean everything. Does he allow the bad things and the good things? Of course. What would happen, before we read our verses, what would happen if everything was good all the time? What would happen in your life, my life, your life, our lives, if everything was perfect all the time? Let's say for a year. What would happen? Your faith would start going, you wouldn't have to have faith. Because everything would be good. You know, when there's not crops, the farmers say, Lord, give us some rain. So God has to allow these defeats. So, Carrie, can you read the first 6 verses here? Most of you know the story, but we're at this point where this happened.
Okay, chapter 16, verse 1. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, Behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go into my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram, and dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived, and when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said to Abram, My wrong be upon thee, I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes, and the Lord judged between me and thee. But Abram said unto Sarai, Behold, thy maid is in thy hand, do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face.
And then you can read it later, but down the rest of the chapter, the angel comes and she runs and she hides and all the things, but you know what happens in the midst of this. So first of all, waiting on God, verse 1. We've talked about this so many times, 16:1. Now Sarah, Abraham's wife, she bare him no children. And she had a handmaid, and she said, okay, let's start doing some scheming. Now, we see that her faith was low. When Abraham agrees with it, we see that his faith was low at this time. But I was thinking, does our faith get low? Our faith goes down sometimes. We get weak sometimes. We don't trust the Lord on things that we should until after something happens and say, oh, sorry, Lord. I should have trusted you in the first place. So here they make this agreement, this faith, waiting. We don't like to wait. We've talked about this so many times as human beings, as Americans and human beings. We don't like to wait for anything. We want to go to a restaurant. We want a steak cooked perfectly medium, but we want a steak cooked perfectly medium or medium rare. We want it to taste perfect, and we want it in a minute and 35 seconds because we're impatient. One restaurant had on their menu said, remember, good food takes time. You don't just rush it out. Now, the food that took the longest, when I worked in an Italian restaurant in St. Louis, they cooked things more like they did in Italy. They said over in Italy, when you order spaghetti, when you order a pasta, they start cooking it then. You know, everybody else cooks the noodles ahead of time, has them cold, you heat them up, whatever. But they start cooking your meal then. It might be an hour or two, it might be over an hour, hour and a half before you get your meal. Because it takes time to cook certain things. We want our meat tender, but we want it cooked in 2 minutes. You know, we want everything perfect. We don't have this patience. We want to get in a drive-through line, and we want our food right now. We don't want the people to be in front of us. We want our burger now. Because we're impatient. We go by a refrigerator. We want it delivered 10 minutes ago. Am I right? You know, we're that type of people. We want it delivered. We want it now because we're impatient. So God's timetable is His. I should have made a slide of this after I did this. I thought, why didn't I do a slide of that? But God's timetable is His and His alone. Now, we all have different timetables, schedules. If you pulled your calendars out, everybody's got different things. You have doctor's appointments, and you have to be at work at a certain time, and you have to go meet somebody for lunch at a certain time, and you're going to drive down here to wherever at a certain day. You're going to go here, and you make timetables, and we put all these things down, and we have our alarms remind us, and our phones remind us, and we write all these things down, and we have to keep up with all this. We each have our own timetable, but God's timetable is the best one around. He's always on time. And He's never late. Baptists have a reputation of being late for church. My father-in-law, "In the Garden" was his favorite song. Steve played it on the guitar and sang it at his funeral, which has been almost 9 years ago now. That was his favorite song. But he lived, it was a long block, a short block and long, but he lived basically, if you counted it, it was probably like 3.5 blocks to the church from where he lived. Sunday school started at 9:30. He would leave the house at 9:30. Why? I don't know. Now, he'd stand at church when they're out at noon. He'd stand there and talk till 1 o'clock. But for some reason, getting to Sunday school was not important to him on time. He'd leave at 9:30. Now, when he left for work, he left 45 minutes early, so he'd be there 15, 20, 30 minutes early. He was always early for work, but for church, I don't know why. He did it for years. When we were there, we'd say, "Hey, we have to leave a quarter after." We'd say, "We got to go." "Okay." And he'd be ready to go and go a quarter after. Took us 2 minutes to get there. But God's timetable, it's perfect. He's never late. He's always on time. Things will happen. So that is, Abraham and Sarah, they had waited for 10 years for a promised son. From the time God called him and after I hadn't told him what's going to happen, all this, about 10 years. Now, 10 years is a while. It's a while to wait. 10 years. We see these shows on TV, You Live in What, and people take these places and remodel. We watch them on their day. They worked, it took them 12 years. Jim, how long did it take you from the time you started your house till you finished it?
Yeah, 13 months.
13 months. And that was a long 13 months. Larry, how long did it take you to build your cabin? Say 12 months so you say you beat Jim. You remember about how long?
It was about a year we got it done, but we actually finished and only played around.
Oh, so yours is 12 months and 29 days, his was 13 months. That still seems like a long time from the time you start. 12 years! My wife wouldn't go for that. Now, we've remodeled 2 bathrooms and a kitchen. She said, "No more." We've done enough remodeling, it ain't going to happen. It's a lot of work. I've had help, and Jim helped with both bathrooms. Larry's helped. My brother-in-law came up from Florida and helped with the bathroom, and it's a lot of work. Saved us a lot of money on labor, but it's a lot of work to remodel. These guys started from scratch. Start from the ground up and start laying it down. Well, as I said, that's a long time to wait, 10 years. Now, this next section, there's going to be 4 things here. I'll give you a minute to write them down, but they're all together. I could have taken this next 4 things and had the whole message on these, but we are to walk by faith. We know that. For we walk by faith, not by sight, according to 2 Corinthians 5:7. So we're going to talk about 4 things here. As I said, I could have had the whole message of this, but walking by faith, number 1, includes a willingness to wait on the Lord. Now, I know sometimes I just try to get you one word, and I thought, okay, I put "wait on the Lord" for you to write down there, but I wonder if we should have had the word "willingness." Here we go back with our impatience. Sometimes we're not willing to wait. We want things right now. When my wife gets hungry, she gets hangry. And because she does have stomach trouble, so when that starts bothering her, she doesn't, because if she goes too long, then she gets sick. But we don't go out, of course, with COVID, a lot of things are different. A friend of mine, David, him and his wife haven't been in a restaurant for over a year. They've gone and picked up food. They've not gone out and eaten. They don't want to get COVID, and that's fine. But on Sundays, a lot of times we don't go out to eat because there's lines. Now, it's not as bad as it used to be. We'll get back to normal, hopefully, but my wife doesn't like to wait in line. She don't want to stand in line for 25 minutes to get her lunch. Like I said, we have this willingness, but walking by faith is a willingness to wait on the Lord. Now, everybody's personality is different. Some people are impatient more than other people are impatient. My brother's one that's impatient. He gets impatient quickly. He's a Christian. He got saved years ago. Doesn't go to church now, but he gets impatient quickly, and he knows he does. He's not as bad as he used to be, but he gets impatient quickly. He gets aggravated, and he'll say things, and then he wish he hadn't said it. I told you we call each other 2-3 times a week. I drop Becky off at 5:30 in the morning, and I call him, or he calls me because he's already in his truck. I forget what it was a few weeks ago, something about Mom, and he said something, and then he shouldn't have said it. He was aggravated, so he calls back about a half half hour. I said, are we good? I said, of course we are. So we're brothers. I said, I'm fine. But we all do that. We have to have a willingness to walk by faith. Walk by faith also, as you see there, is being concerned only with the glory of God. Why are we here? Glorify God. Our whole purpose. We're not here to do whatever. Now, God gives all of us different talents. You know, I don't know what all Ulysses does at Crane, but I probably couldn't do what Ulysses does. Ulysses does. Can't talk right either. The teachers are here. That's an awesome responsibility. I couldn't cut hair. I never did cut hair. My wife's been cutting my hair for almost over 40 years. The guy in Springfield showed her, he said, we're going to be missionaries, as you know, and he said, if you're going to go to the mission field, he said, you're going to have to know how to cut hair. So this barber showed Becky how to cut hair. And she's been doing it ever since. She's been trimming my beard for me. She does that. I never cut the boys hair. I would have messed it up. I'm like some things in paste, I would take a big chunk. So, am I right, Connie? When you cut with scissors, you got to take little bitty bites, right? Take a big chunk, what happens? Like Kinsey did that time. At the daycare, when somebody should have been watching her, she chopped her hair off. You get the picture. We're here for the glory of God. That's the only reason we're here. God gives us talents, He gives us jobs, He gives us families, but it's all to glorify Him. That's walking by faith. Thirdly, as you see, walking by faith, it means that acting on the authority of God's Word. A lot of people have opinions. There are political opinions. There are all kinds of opinions on all kinds of things. I was telling the ladies that asked earlier, Dale got to the hospital and he should have been taking that medicine for that fungal. Remember he had that streptococcal meningitis a few years ago. They would have left him they would have left him alone without doing a spinal tap another day, and I was there. Another day and a half, he would have died. And he has to have this medicine because he's this fungus. He can never have mushrooms again. He can't have anything like that. He loves mushrooms. He used to love mushrooms. Can't have any. Mike, I hope you find some. I need some mushrooms. But they weren't giving Dale this medicine. Sylvia found out Friday. Of course, Sylvia's a nurse. She got hold of 10:30 at night. She's talking to the nurse, and she found out they hadn't given Dale this medicine. She talked to the doctor yesterday, had a long talk with the doctor. And the doctor said, well, I felt that is, so I'm talking about her opinions. She said, I felt that he shouldn't have that with the Coumadin, so I didn't assign it. And Sylvia said, if he doesn't have this, he will die. After she explained what happened before, the doctor said, I'm going to put him back on it immediately. But that was her opinion. Now, another doctor may not have had that opinion. Jim went to the doctor one time, the doctor said, what's wrong with you? He said, you tell me, I'm paying you to do that. Everybody has their own opinion. But we have to, the opinion that counts the most is right here. Am I right? I have over 500 books in my library. When we built the office, we put shelves in there was an outset, and Jim put doors on it. I got all the books. And do I use all of them all the time? Of course not. But I have over 500 books, which are obsolete anymore. You know, their books are antiques anymore. Everybody uses the internet and computers. But I have over 500 books. There's a lot of information in a lot of those. But I have some books and I've read some things, and I didn't agree with the opinions. I didn't agree with a person's theology, and I'll put a note in the book. I disagree with this point. I disagree with this point. Yeah, everybody's allowed their own. Other people are allowed to be wrong. It's okay. But we have to write on theology. We have to write on doctrine. But it's God's Word. This book is more important than my commentaries. Now, you use the commentaries and you learn from them, but it's the Bible we take our thing. So real quickly, walking by faith will result in joy and peace in our life. Like Larry said, I was up in the hospital 4 or 5 hours Friday between Larry, going back and forth, saying Larry, Roger, then somehow stopped for 30 minutes, ate lunch with my wife. But I was there almost 6 hours on Friday. Larry's pretty weak on Friday. But he said, the Lord has allowed him to go through some of these things graciously. For what reason, we don't know. We don't like it sometimes. But while waiting on God, Abraham and Sarah, they got sidetracked from their walk by faith. We have to be careful that no matter what somebody says, what somebody does, that we have to stay on track. I got saved and I knew the Lord wanted me to go to Bible college. And Butch wasn't a Christian, and he said, why don't you just go to St. Louis University, go to a state school for a year, and then decide what you want to do. I said, I don't think the Lord wants me to do that. Now, he didn't force me to do that. He said, you can do what you want. But he was looking at it from a worldly perspective. I was looking at it because God called me to preach. He didn't tell me I couldn't go to Bible college. You know, you get 17, 18, you can do what you want. But he, in his perspective, was that he wanted me to go to a state school, because he did. And he was in the Navy. Then I decided, I think I told you, decided I was going to join the Navy, because Butch had been in the Navy. I was going to join the Navy, and then at that time the GI Bill would have paid my whole schooling. I thought, well, I'll go to the Navy for 3 years, then go to college. Well, I'll go in there, everything, my grades, ASVAB test, everything, my grades were good. God smart. Everything was good. Started talking about different things, and he said about physical things. And what about your eyesight? I said, I only have sight in one eye. I can still remember the recruiter sitting there. He dropped his head to his desk and put it on his arms and said, oh no. I said, what's the matter? He said, we can't use you. He said, now, if emergency situation, you might get drafted. Well, they just ended the draft, but he said, if you lost the sight of the other eye, we'd be paying you full-time disability, and if you had a family, the government just says it's not worth the risk. So the Lord closed the door, sent me to Bible college. I took care of it. He knows what I want. Well, Sarah, Abraham and Sarah, they jumped the gun. I guess that's what we could say. They didn't wait on God. So real quickly, the scheming around God, verses 2 through 4. Of course, Sarah's plan, she decided, okay, I'm going to do what I want to. She knew that she was incapable, or she thought that she was incapable of bearing a child at that age. God said he was going to have one. She wanted one. She began to second guess God. Now, you know, I'm old enough. I've been around long enough. I've read enough. I got a master's degree in counseling. I know women desire to have children. Now, when they become teenagers, James Dobson said raising teenagers like nailing jello to a tree. When they become teenagers, you want to kill them. But a woman's desire, God made them that way. They want to have children. They want to have a family. Now, I always caution young girls against the Cinderella syndrome. Think that everything's good. Your prince, your knight in shining armor is going to come along, and he's going to rescue you. He's going to be perfect, and you're going to go live in the castle, and everything's going to be perfect forever after. It doesn't work that way. We don't live in a perfect world. But it's every little girl. She wants to have children. She wants to, most girls want to play with dolls. They want to have children and families. That's how God made us. So Sarah, she was like God made her. She wanted to have a child. She wanted to have a child and hold that child. Ladies, you know what it's like when you have that baby, all that pain. 9 months, carrying that child, and the pain of childbirth. A woman is as close to death during childbirth as any other time. Kenny Owens, old electric, his wife died when she was in childbirth with her second child. But when they take that baby, those who've been in there, when we had our Lamaze class, the teacher said that one guy fainted, hit his head on the table. He was in the hospital 3 days. Mom and the baby went home in 2 days. When those babies come out, they ain't pretty. Am I right, moms? But they're beautiful. They're the most beautiful sight you've ever seen in your life. You don't care that they're all covered with fluid, from bodily fluid and all that stuff. And they lay that baby on that mom's chest. It's the most beautiful sight. you've ever seen. I was so proud with both of our children. I was in there both times. The first one, Rebecca's pregnant, Ryan, she said, "Get out of here, leave. I don't want you in here." I started to go out the door, and she said, "Where are you going?" I said, "You told me to leave." She said, "You're not going anywhere, you're staying here." Women change their mind real quick. Men don't do that, right? Ladies, do men do that? Let's not, but you want to have babies? But Sarah decided, I've got a better plan. We have to be careful that when our lives are going along and things aren't the way we think they are or should be, you know, it may have been Sarah's plan, but Abraham agreed to it. But when we get things going along, we've got to remember that we can't change God's plans. Get patient. Look at this next slide. Note that they were unwilling to wait on God. So we have to have willingness. They both acted to please themselves rather than to glorify God. We could talk about that the rest of the time. You know, they didn't obey the Word of God. I said the Word of God is final authority. They both acted in a way that they wanted to do what they wanted to do. And we're all guilty of that. Because we've all been to the place, and I'm not going to lay down, because if I lay down, I may not be able to get back up at that age. But we've all been to the place where instead of trusting the Lord, we're down on our backs, flat on our backs. And then what do we say? Tell me what we say then. What do we say? Help me, Lord. Sorry, Lord. We wait to the final straw and then say, okay, Lord, I'll take your help. I'll take your help. This is a natural result of following the wisdom of the world. Look at this. Well, I missed the slide. Fighting with each other, verses 4 through 6. There was a debate. Should we do it? Should we not? Yes, no, yes, no. When the world's wisdom gets in the way, James 4:1 says, from whence comes wars and fightings among you. Listen to this. It says, come they not hence, even of your lusts that war in your members? The world's wisdom says, what did Elvis Presley, what was the last song he sang before he died? Anybody remember? Anybody remember? The last words he said, and he died later, was, I did it my way. Now, Elvis was a Christian. He started out singing in churches. They said he got saved at one point. He was a Christian. But the last song he sang in Indianapolis, Indiana, was I Did It My Way. He sounded better than I did. But it was a bragging type thing. That song. I lived a life. But I did it my way. If we are serving God, we can't do it our way. We want to. We'd like to. We want to have our way. We don't like. And when do you go for the infusion?
I'm not sure. They're not.
Okay, okay. Is that something you want to do? That's what I figured. I don't know what all is involved in an infusion versus a shot. I don't know. They got the infusion center at the hospital. Before COVID, they had so many people in there. They set up 2 rows of parking. They had valet parking. And there was a young guy named Connor that was doing that. I don't remember his name. I got a grandson named Connor. I don't know what all that involves. I don't know how much time it takes. But I know Ann's not looking for. God's going to cause that, and that's better than doing chemo or radiation. By the way, Mike's going every day for 5.5 weeks to do radiation too, so pray for him on that. We have to do things sometimes we don't want to. But God puts it there for us for a reason sometimes. But of all fights, family fights are the most painful ones, and they're the most difficult ones to settle. Last year with COVID, there was a lot of talk on radio programs and TV programs. With the election, everything coming up with the election, there was a lot of talk of what was going to happen in households on Thanksgiving. Because in a lot of families, you have conservatives, you have liberals. And this thing with political ideas have turned into people killing each other. Used to you could disagree, so what? But now this political stuff's turned into people killing each other. You wear a hat and you get killed. But people are wondering how our Thanksgiving dinner's going to be with all this stuff and with COVID and all that stuff, you know. We're all fighting family fights. They're difficult. It didn't take long for Sarah, for her plan to produce fruit. Hagar became pregnant, and Sarah became bitter. Oh, I'm going to fix God's way. I'm going to do it myself. And then we wish we hadn't done it. We're all guilty of it. People tell lies, steal, cheat, whatever. At Liberty University, some things happened a year ago, and I just read Friday that they're suing Jerry Falwell Jr. for $10 million. A whole bunch of stuff happened a little over a year ago. Sad. Dr. Falwell's probably rolling over in his grave if he had a chance to do that. Great ministry. Still going strong. But somebody tries to do things on their own. So look at this last slide. Failure to deal with problems properly always leads to greater problems. You have to handle situations God's way. When there's a problem in the church, we're supposed to take it to each other, supposed to take it before the church. God has ways to take care of things. When there's a family problem, it's supposed to stay in the family. We don't need other people getting in the way. We don't want other people making phone calls and thinking they can handle it. It's a family problem. You settle it. Fix it. Most times things can be fixed, but we have to wait on the Lord. And failure to do this is going to cause bigger problems. Because what happens? What do you do? What happens when you take a little bitty snowball and that snow is wet enough to pack and you start rolling it? What happens to that snowball? It gets bigger. What happens if you take that snowball by a hill and let it go? It's out of control. It's out of control. That thing will roll down. Well, I've done it. That thing could get so big it could knock you silly. I've done it. The snowball effect. What they should have done was to build an altar, confess their sins to the Lord, and ask for forgiveness. Now, back then they didn't have churches, so keep in mind that's what they did when you worship God. You built an altar. They brought sacrifices in later, not till later, but they didn't do things the way we do it. We call this our altar. We can come and pray. We can meditate. But they should have built an altar and asked God for forgiveness. Now, when we do things, we don't have to build an altar. We can just go straight to the Lord. Aren't you glad when Jesus died, the veil in the temple was rent in twain, and that communication between us and God was opened up? Before that, they had to go to the priest, and they had to go to all these other things, and God didn't always talk directly to people. Now, something happens, we could come right here, we could sit in our car, we could sit at our homes, whatever, and we can pray. And God will hear us. All three had their own way of dealing with the problem. Sarah's solution, blame her husband and mistreat the servant. Verse number 5. Abraham's solution, give it to his wife, blame it on her. Whatever it is, whatever it takes, make her happy. Hagar's solution, you read the rest of the chapter, she ran away. They all three had different solutions. Now that's common. When a husband and wife disagree on something, they have different ideas. One says it should be this. One says it should be this. We've never in our life had any, we don't have to consult, Becky and I don't consult each other, say, is it okay if I go buy, if I go to the store, is it okay if I buy a pound of lettuce? I know people do that. They can't do anything unless they ask the other person's permission. Becky's brother bought a Camaro one time. He said it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. That is his money. Him and his wife had separate accounts, and he had 2 jobs, and he just joked about it. We all have our own ideas, but we've never done anything major without discussing it majorly. Bought a house. You buy a refrigerator. You buy something big that's not just a little thing. We don't do it. We don't just go out and do it. We discuss it. We agreed on that when we first got married. We're not going to make these decisions. Well, Sarah made a big decision without her husband. She got her husband in on it, and then of course it shouldn't have been done that way. But Hagar ran away. Real quickly, getting sidetracked in our walk of faith. And their walk of faith led to actions with tragic results. That would have been a good slide. The only answers for them, the only answers they should have done is went to God. That's what our lesson here is. Don't think anything, now I know having a child is a major thing, but don't think anything's too small for God. Dale's told the story over and over of losing the keys down in Florida in the beach. I've been there. Most of you probably been on beaches. There's a lot of sand on beaches. You drop something and it just sinks in the sand. All that area, I think that was when they were in Clearwater. I've been there. All that area, there's a lot of sand and water. He said, Lord, I need my keys. Was it a coincidence that his keys were at his feet? Somebody talk to me. Was it a coincidence? God put the keys. He had already looked there. And we've all done that. We've all looked for something all for 20 minutes, then we say, Lord, help me, and then it's right there. If you'd have looked and asked God in the first place, you might have found it in the first place. We've been there. We've done that. We have to go to the Lord first. Our faith has to be strong enough that we trust the Lord for our families, for our jobs, for our careers, for our homes, for everything. We've had to put a lot of trust in the Lord through this COVID thing. Some have gotten it, some haven't gotten it. Some people may not get it. Maybe your body fights it off. Some of you may not. You get shots or whatever, you may not get it. My body fought it off, didn't fight it off. The Lord allowed me to have it. Why? I don't know. But we have to serve the Lord and let Him take care of the little things. Don't think that anything's too little for God to say, hey, I will handle the situation. Do you know your faith is just as big for the little things as it is for the big things? For the little things as it is the big things. Me and Larry were talking one time, I remember, and maybe Troy can verify it. We talk about when the lottery gets to be 160 million or 400 million or whether it's 20 million. I said, well, it's probably better to buy a ticket. We were talking about it. I said, it'd be better to buy a ticket when it's not as high. And Larry said he read that the statistics are the same. Am I right, Troy? About the same chances of winning either way, whether it's we're 20 million or 500 billion. Has anybody heard who won that $1 billion? Did anybody ever claim that $1 billion north of Ryan in Michigan? Have you heard, Troy? Has anybody ever heard that? I hadn't heard a thing. Ryan hadn't heard a thing. He was an hour away. But statistically, it's the same number. Your chances. You know what? If you trust the Lord and let Him have it, guess what your chances of Him taking care of it? 100%. Does He take care of it the way we want all the time? No, but faith. Let's stand. Our faith in the Lord. Let's stand with heads bowed and eyes closed. We have to put our trust in God. We have to keep our eyes on the prize. As we close, what did Paul say? I'm ready to be offered. My departure is at hand. I've finished the course. He said, I've kept the faith. Maybe you're listening by video. We're not going to have an invitation. We're not going to play music today at your church. But maybe you're listening by video and you can trust the Lord by faith. You can ask God to come into your heart and say, come into my heart and save me completely, and He will do that. You don't have to have any fancy words. You don't have to have anything great. You put your faith and trust in God. Christians, as we close in prayer, let's determine that we're going to help our faith to grow. So, Father, we're talking about this faith of Abraham. Did he waver? Yes. Did his wife waver? Yes. Did they trust in you? No. Have we all been guilty of doing the same thing? Of course. May our faith grow through this series, through seeing what Abraham did, how you use this man, the father of a nation. We have people all around us. Everybody has people around us. Connie has people that I can't reach. Ann has people that I can't reach. Mike has people that I can't reach. Diane has people that I can't reach. But you've put people in our lives that each one of us can be a testimony to, and be an example. So bless us, Lord. Use us, guide us, direct us. Bless our day. We dedicate it to you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for answered prayer. May you continue to touch these lives that we mentioned that need your grace more than anything else. And all God's people said.